हाँ जी सर, लाइव है।
हाँ
आप ज्वाइन करना शुरू कर दिए।
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, हाँ जी, नहीं ठीक बात नहीं, विद इन 3-4 मिनट्स काफी हो जाता है। एवरीबॉडी इज वेटिंग इन द क्यू।
बिल्कुल।
जस्ट फ्रैक्शन ऑफ सेकंड्स लगती है ज्वाइन करने में।
और आज वैसे भी इतना पॉपुलर, मेजर पर्सनालिटीज पॉपुलर टॉपिक को डिस्कस कर रहे हैं।
उस ग्रुप में तो लोगों ने डाला कि राकेश जी को कि भी सर ये वेबिनार की बजाय फिजिकल सेमिनार्स करो। आपको फिजिकल सुनने बड़े दिन हो गए। एक ग्रुप में मैसेज, भाई साहब देखा ना आपने, मैसेज डाला हुआ था।
अरे मैंने नहीं देखा।
एक मेंबर ने डाला था मैसेज कि राकेश जी आपको फिजिकल सुने बड़े दिन हो गए।
अच्छा अच्छा।
मैम रजिस्ट्रेशन भी ओपन रखना, अगर कोई नया फ्रेश भी आ रहा है तो वो भी रजिस्ट्रेशन करने देना उसके लिए।
ठीक है सर।
हाँ,
क्वेश्चंस आंसर जो है, वैसे तो आप बहुत ब्रॉडली राकेश जी आप कवर सब कर ही रहे हैं, लेकिन कोई क्वेश्चन बीच में लिखना चाहे तो मैं Q&A में ही मैं इसको बोलता हूँ कि वो
हाँ जी, हाँ
Q&A
जी।
में ही मेंशन करेंगे, और आपको जब कन्वीनियंट होगा आप उसको
हाँ,
आप ले लीजिए। और टाइम लिमिट सर रखेंगे 7:30 तक।
हाँ, उन लोगों के क्वेश्चंस के लिए भी समय छोड़ेंगे।
हाँ, मतलब एक 7:30 तक हम लोग क्लोज कर देंगे।
जी हाँ, जी हाँ।
ब्रजेश जी और 2 मिनट बाद आप शुरू कर देना इंट्रोडक्शन वगैरह, उसके बाद
बिल्कुल।
फिर शुरू हो जाएगा, है ना।
हाँ, 5:30 हो गया है, 5:32 पर।
हाँ, फिर जब तक काफी लोग आ जाएंगे और आ जाएंगे धीरे
हाँ,
धीरे।
इंट्रोडक्शन भी 5 मिनट लगेंगे, तो
हाँ हाँ,
तब तक ज्वाइन कर लेंगे सर।
वैसे आप ऑफिस पहुंच गए या अभी कहीं और ऑफिस में हो?
नहीं नहीं, मैं तो कोर्ट से मैं और सोमिल दोनों ही आ गए यहाँ पे, ऑफिस ही है।
अच्छा, ऑफिस
भी
में।
ऑफिस में ही है। हाँ।
तो आजकल ज्यादा टाइम हाई कोर्ट जाता है, कहाँ पे जाता है?
हाई कोर्ट ट्राइब्यूनल, 2 दिन से सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जा रहा है। हाँ।
तो ट्रिब्यूनल भी ऑनलाइन होने वाला है, ट्रिब्यूनल तो ऐसे ही चलेगा?
ट्राइब्यूनल तो ऐसे ही चलेगा अभी।
तो इसमें अपीलेट में सीआईटी अपील के पास तो सब ऑनलाइन ही होगा, या वहाँ भी कोई ऑप्शंस हैं ट्रिब्यूनल ऑनलाइन फिजिकल आने पे?
सीआईटी अपील में?
हाँ,
हेलो,
कोई
आपका
एसएससी
फ्रेम
अगर
फ्रीज
चाहे
हो
तो
गया।
क्या, कोई एसएससी अगर चाहे तो फिजिकल कर सकता है, ऑप्शन है?
नहीं, फिजिकली वीसी से हियरिंग दी जाएगी, सीआईटी अपील।
अच्छा, ब्रजेश जी स्टार्ट करो।
ठीक है, मैं सीए ब्रजेश अग्रवाल, सेंट्रल दिल्ली स्टडी सर्कल की तरफ से सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स को वेलकम करता हूं। और आज के हमारे जो मेन स्पीकर्स हैं वो सीए डॉक्टर राकेश गुप्ता जी हैं और सीए सोमिल अग्रवाल जी हैं। ये दोनों आज के हमारे स्पीकर हैं, तो मैं इनका स्वागत करता हूं। और आज के मैं दोनों स्पीकर जो हैं उनको मैं 1 बाय 1 इंट्रोड्यूस करता हूं। डॉक्टर राकेश गुप्ता जी, आप सभी लोग जानते हैं उनके बारे में, कितना भी मैं बोलूं तो कमी है, लेकिन शुरू में ये बोलना चाहता हूं कि बहुत ही सौम्य पर्सनालिटी हैं, बहुत इजीली एक्सेसिबल हैं। और एक सीए पर्सनालिटी, जो एक सीए सोचता है कि मैंने ये क्वालिफिकेशन लेनी है, तो सारी की सारी वो क्वालिफिकेशन उन्होंने ली हुई हैं। आपने मेरिट पोजीशन से अपने अपने स्कूलिंग करी है, और ग्रेजुएशन जो है सेंट जॉन्स कॉलेज आगरा से 1980 में फर्स्ट रैंक इन द यूनिवर्सिटी उन्होंने प्राप्त किया है। अब क्वालिफिकेशन की लिस्ट आप सुन लीजिए: FCA, FCS, AICWA, MBA, LLB में ही फर्स्ट रैंक है, LLB के बाद LLM, उसके बाद डॉक्टरेट PhD। तो जितने भी रेस्पेक्टेबल क्वालिफिकेशन एक सीए प्रोफेशनल लगभग प्राप्त कर सकता है वो सब उन्होंने ली हुई है। इज वेल एजुकेटेड पर्सन। अब उसके बाद ये ITAT मेंबर जो हैं 37 ईयर्स की एज में अपॉइंट हुए एट हैदराबाद, लेकिन प्रोफेशन में अटेंशन देने की वजह से उसको रिजाइन करा। और बहुत सारी किताबें जो हैं, बुक्स जो हैं आपने ऑथर्ड करी हैं, को ऑथर्ड करी हैं। उनके पार्टनर हैं डॉक्टर राजकुमार अग्रवाल जी। उसके साथ 3 बुक्स जो है टैक्समैन के साथ उन्होंने को ऑथर करी हुई है। पहली बुक है सर्च एंड सीजर एंड असेसमेंट ऑफ सच केसेस। सेकेंड है टैक्सेशन ऑफ रियल एस्टेट डेवलपर्स एंड जॉइंट डेवलपमेंट एग्रीमेंट्स अरेंजमेंट्स। थर्ड है लॉ रिलेटिंग टू ब्लैक मनी, अनडिस्क्लोज्ड फॉरेन इनकम एंड एसेट्स एंड इम्पोजिशन ऑफ टैक्स एक्ट 2015। अब वो आज की डेट में वो एज ए प्रैक्टिसिंग एडवोकेट प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं। इसका मतलब आप समझते होंगे, इसका मतलब उन्होंने सीए का COP जो है उस पर प्रैक्टिस नहीं कर रहे हैं। एज एन एडवोकेट ही इज प्रैक्टिसिंग एंड ही इज प्रैक्टिसिंग इनटू इनकम टैक्स अपीलेट ट्रिब्यूनल, हाई कोर्ट्स एंड सुप्रीम कोर्ट। और अभी शुरुआत में मेरी बात यही हो रही थी कि आजकल वो सारे केसेस अपने हाई कोर्ट और सुप्रीम कोर्ट के ही मैक्सिमम आजकल देखते हैं। And he has argued high-profile cases of the country at Tribunal and High Court, drawing wide media coverage. उसे मीडिया कवरेज भी काफी आपको मिला हुआ है। And he has participated in United Nations Committee of Experts on International Cooperation and Tax Matters, held at UN headquarters in New York in April 2017 and April 2019. And he has also participated at regional headquarters in Geneva in October 2018. आप इंटरनेशनल एसोसिएशन ऑफ टैक्स जजेस के मेंबर हैं और उसकी मीटिंग्स जो हैं हेलसिंकी फिनलैंड इन अक्टूबर 2017 में हुई थी और कैम्ब्रिज UK सितंबर 2019। तो आप देख सकते हैं कितने वेल रेड पर्सन हैं, वेल अचीव्ड हैं और एट द सेम टाइम पूरा इंटरनेशनल प्रेजेंस है। और चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स में भी उनको इन्विटेशन था अबू धाबी एंड बहरीन में। तो ये मैं कहूँगा तो ये कि ये बहुत संक्षिप्त सा है। इसके बाद भी बहुत कुछ है जो आप सुनेंगे तो आप उनके बारे में और कुछ जानेंगे। और साथ में मैं जो अपने कोई स्पीकर्स हैं उनको भी मैं इंट्रोड्यूस करना चाहूँगा। वो सोमिल अग्रवाल जी हैं। ही इज अगेन, ये भी चौमुखी प्रतिभा के मालिक हैं, यंग एज है और साथ में बहुत सारी क्वालिफिकेशंस, वेल रेड पर्सनालिटी। ही इज अगेन ए चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट और कंपनी सेक्रेटरी, कॉस्ट अकाउंटेंट, डीसा, LLB, LLM UK। आप भी लॉयर बाय प्रोफेशन है और डायरेक्ट टैक्स लिटिगेशन एडवाइजरी हैंडल करते हैं और इनकम टैक्स अपीलेट ट्रिब्यूनल में, हाँ यस, डायरेक्ट प्रेजेंस है उनकी। बहुत सारे चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्सेस हैं जो हैं उसमें उनका इनविटेशन है और उसमें वो जाके अपने वेरियस लेक्चर्स, प्रेजेंस उनकी हर जगह रहती है। तो आपको टॉपिक के बारे में मैं थोड़ा सा और बताऊंगा कि टॉपिक तो आपके पास क्लियर है ही, लेकिन साथ में ब्रॉडली कुछ क्वेश्चंस की कवरेज होगी। यह है व्हाट इज द रेशियो एंड इफेक्ट ऑफ सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजंस in the case of checkmate as tax treatment of employees contribution of PF and ESI, and what is the way forward in pending and future litigation। तो इसी तरह से दूसरा जो केस लॉ है सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ही, वो है ख्याति रियल्टर्स and whether this dilutes the already settled law of bad debt as enunciated by TRF। और थर्ड सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजन, नेक्स्ट सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजन है SM overseas as to the validity of reopening of an assessment during the pendency of 154 proceedings। नेक्स्ट है सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजन मनसुख दाइंग on the interpretation of distribution of revaluation of revenue in terms of unamended section 45 subsection 4। और नेक्स्ट सुप्रीम कोर्ट डिसीजन है न्यू नोबेल ऑन द इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन solely not for profit, scope of inquiry by prescribed competent authority. और एड्रेस करेंगे अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में व्हाट प्रिकॉशंस टू बी टेकन व्हाइल ड्राफ्टिंग ग्राउंड्स ऑफ अपील. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है. देखिए, हम लोगों के पास कोई भी अपील आती है तो हाउ टू ड्राफ्ट द अपील, petition for admission of additional grounds, additional evidence, written submissions, paper book, condonation of delay, stay petition, early hearing request और बहुत सारी चीजें आप अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में कवर करेंगे. मैंने काफी विस्तृत वे में आप लोगों के टॉपिक को और क्वेश्चंस जो कवर करें उनको इंट्रोड्यूस किया है. तो मोहन जी, राकेश जी शुरू करें. उसके पहले आप 2 लाइनें कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं? आप अनम्यूट करिए, म्यूट है अभी.
ठीक है, मेरा ख्याल आप प्रोग्राम स्टार्ट करा जाए. मेरा ख्याल और ज्यादा उसमें कुछ नहीं है. तो मैं राकेश जी से रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ कि आगे का प्रोग्राम राकेश जी और शामिल दोनों जिस तरीके से भी वो चाहे इस प्रोग्राम को आगे बढ़ाएं. राकेश जी.
मैं सारे पार्टिसिपेंट से रिक्वेस्ट ये करूंगा, बहुत फोकस प्रोग्राम है, तो कृपया अपना बार बार अपना नाम और मेंबरशिप नंबर उसमें मत डालें चैट बॉक्स में, क्योंकि आप ऑलरेडी रजिस्टर्ड हैं तो आपको अटेंडेंस उसी हिसाब से ही मिलेगी. और कोई भी क्वेश्चन आपको पूछना है तो वो Q&A सेक्शन में आप अपने क्वेश्चन को पोस्ट करें. तो मैं अब रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं हमारे आज के स्पीकर CA राकेश गुप्ता जी और सोमिल अग्रवाल जी, प्लीज proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Brajesh ji. Thank you, Mohan Mittal ji. And very respected and very affectionate, my fellow professional colleagues, brothers and sisters. It's always a pleasure to be with all of you. May not be physically, but then through the web. And that pleasure becomes compounded when these topics, which are of very practical importance, are to be deliberated. Now, today's webinar is dissected into 2 parts. The one part is about the issues, the cautions, the precautions while drafting appeals. And the second is the recent spate of Supreme Court decisions, many of which may not have gone in favor of the taxpayers, and in the light of those adversarial decisions, how to encounter the situations emerging. Somil and I would speak on the various facets, issues, precautions in appeals, and then I will take up the Supreme Court's decision. I would first of all request Somil to speak on the appeals, and I would urge him to focus on the practical aspects, because insofar as the law is concerned, our audience is quite and well informed audience. They are very much aware about the law. Therefore, what precautions should be taken while drafting grounds of appeal? What are the powers of CIT appeal? How to draft a petition for additional evidence, additional ground, what precautions should be taken while preparing the paper book? And all these things which have got bearing on our day-to-day practice, I would urge him to deal and dwell. And then I'll also supplement, if not supplant, his efforts. So I request Somil to take up the first issue about the appeals. Somil.
Thank you, sir. My Guru Rakesh sir, Brajesh sir, Mohan Mittal sir, Ashok sir, respected seniors in the profession, and my very dear friends. Appeal, a right given by the statute, has to be exercised as per the statute. So requirements which are given in the statute as per the plain law have to be fulfilled, and accordingly this right can be exercised. Sir, assessments have come to an end. We have received assessment orders, demand notices, computations. And the question is filing of appeal. And here, number of times I've seen, especially in cases where the addition is less, or somebody feels that the addition is apparently wrong on the face of it. So the question comes whether we should only file for rectification or appeal should be filed or not. And especially in context of the processing, the orders under section 143(1), which are received, where in the past we have seen adjustments on account of ESIPF deposited beyond the relevant due date, but before the due date of return, based on the information given in the tax audit report. Similarly, on account of contingent liability, which is reported in tax audit report, because in the tax audit report, that information which is furnished with respect to contingent liability. Now there are two views, because of there is a slight change in the form. In clause 21, where this information is filled, the heading debited to the profit and loss account. Earlier, that heading used to cover all the clauses, but now it covers only the couple of initial clauses. Personal expense, capital expenditures debited to penal account. However, information has to be furnished, and number of times in couple of cases we have seen that even if the contingent liability has not been debited to penal account, the information is furnished in tax audit report, because there is contingent liability in the notes to accounts which is mentioned, or there is. What happens is that the CPC, the processing, picks up that contingent liability on the basis of tax audit report and matches with the disallowance made or not, and accordingly adjustment is made. On similar aspects, sir, I remember I was handling a matter, and in that case, deductions or amount which has to be reduced, say for example, profit on sale of assets, which one wants to reduce from the profit and loss account, or adjustments under Ind AS 116. Similar kinds of adjustments, which the income has to be reduced from the income from the net profit as per the profit and loss account. However, they are not exempt income. What that case was that those amounts were excluded in the return form as part of income considered under the other heads, and that was reduced from the profit and loss account. Now CPC, they match this schedule with the schedule of other sources in the exempt income schedule. So for example, 4 adjustments were made. One was dividend income, obviously exempt, which formed part of exempt income also. Couple of these adjustments, profit on sale of asset or Ind AS 116 and such kind of adjustments, which were required to be reduced and were reduced in this column. However, they did not find place in the exempt income schedule or the other sources schedule, and therefore the adjustment was made. Now, sir, 143(1) intimation comes, and sometimes parallelly or nearby about time, cases also picked up for scrutiny under 143(2). So there is a presumption, or there is a phenomena which is adopted that, sir, assessment has been picked up. We can explain all our claims in the assessment. There is no need to take any action on the 143(1). So, sir, I want to break this myth. Return is filed, say at 10 lakh rupees, 143(1) intimation is received, wherein 3 lakh adjustment is made, for example. So 13 lakh is the processed income, and now assessment will be framed. So while framing the assessment order, the assessing officer will begin from the income process under 143(1). And therefore, in my humble view, the correct course of action, the proper remedy would be filing of appeal against the order under section 143(1), which is appealable order under section 246 capital A. Recently, I received a matter in which such kind of adjustments were made, and that adjustments were to a tune of rupees 23 crores. Immediately after, after the receiving of proposal of adjustment, 143(2) was issued. Subsequently, 143(1) was issued. Adjustments were made. The assessee took a call that assessment is already open. I'll make my claims, and accordingly did not file appeal. When the assessment order was passed, there was only one addition with respect to surcharge education cess, which has now been retrospectively amendment has been done, and that has to be disallowed. And when they saw the computation, because the assessing officer did not make any adjustment, any addition on account of the adjustments which were made in 143(1), and then the question arose, sir, assessment में तो कुछ नहीं है, जो डिसअलाउंस करी वो हम प्रेस नहीं करना चाहते, पर हमारा रिफंड तो 8 crore से कम कर दिया गया. Then the investigation started. We asked, where is your return, whether any 143(1) was received, and that 143(1) came to our notice, which was not challenged. And then the delay had to be explained of almost 1.5 to 2 years. In that case, we took a ground that, sir, there was a bona fide belief by the assessee that assessment would be taken up and accordingly claims would be made there. And on this, we'll discuss more in detail when I come to condonation of delays. So the point here which I want to drive is that intimation under 143(1), there is a tendency that, all right, we should file rectification. Yes, we should file rectification. However, the concern, the issue that arises is rectification is the power under 154, and that provides correction in respect of mistake apparent from record. Right, sir? So mistake apparent from record is the narrow scope of the rectification petition. Whereas if you file the appeal against 143(1), complete scope is available to argue your appeal on any aspect. However, the limitation that can come in respect of 154, say assessee waits for 154, it is disposed, it is not disposed, number of times it is not disposed. Say it is rejected and then you file appeal against 154, then that would be a limited appeal, whether the adjustments which were not corrected in 154, were they not mistake apparent from record or not. So only relying on 154 and filing appeal subsequently against 154 would reduce the scope and which can prejudice the interest of the assessee. And therefore, filing an appeal is a very simple task and not much of concern. Grounds can be taken and accordingly appeal can be filed. Simultaneously, alternate remedy of 154 can be taken. And if subsequently 154 is allowed, one can withdraw the appeal. But foregoing those 30 days and then going into adding that hurdle of delay of filing the appeal, that is the issue which one needs to understand. And accordingly, in my humble submission, we must file appeal against 143(1). So this call with one has to take 143(1) or 143(3) rectification or appeal, in my humble view, we must file appeal. And when I started my career, I learned from my guru that every order is a snake and it should be killed. So we should challenge the order. The only caution that I would add here is that once we set the ball rolling of litigation, once you file appeal, you set the ball rolling. So withdrawal of appeal is not a unilateral act that you say, I want to withdraw and it is withdrawn. It is a judicial discretion of the appellate authority, whether they allow withdrawal of appeal or not. Obviously, in 143(1), simple adjustments, if allowed in 154, there should not be any problem in getting withdrawal of the appeal. However, a overall call, seeing the various aspects of the matter has to be taken, whether some enhancement or some concern is there in the matter, then one should take a very cautious and calculated call whether to file appeal or not. Otherwise, in most of the case, to avoid any addition of hurdle of delay, to avoid any limitation on the scope of appeal, the arguments that one can place in the appeal, we must file appeal against the order, including the orders under 143(1). Regarding ESIPF, the checkmate, sir will discuss more in detail. And similarly, sir, in respect to contingent liabilities also, 143(1), many times adjustments have been seen. Similarly, by tagging exempt income with the profit and loss account, adjustments are made. Such kind of automated adjustments are made against which appeal must be filed. Now, while filing the appeal, regarding CIT appeal, assessee has 30 days after the receipt of the demand notice to file the appeal. Tribunal 60 days to file the appeal on receipt of the order. Generally, we have seen the orders are received 25th day, 26th day. Sir, last date बिल्कुल पास में है, appeal file करनी है. Now the appeal form requires us to put statement of facts, which is a requirement of the form. Now at this stage, generally all that we have is the order, and on that basis, whatever additional disallowances are made, we are framing our grounds. Over here, two important aspects I want to discuss. One, while filing the appeal, we must, along with the order, at least examine the computation and return of income. Because there are cases where we have seen that deduction or disallowance or deductions which have been claimed have not been allowed in the computation, and there is no discussion in the assessment order. So merely relying on assessment order where there is no deduction, no discussion, one may tend to miss that issue that deduction has not been allowed. So return must be examined and to see whether any claims which were made which have not been discussed and still they have been disallowed by the assessing officer while computation of the income. Similarly, prepaid taxes, whether proper claim has been given or not. And whether tax on returned income has been deposited or not. I understand nowadays e-filing of return, taxes, unless it is paid, return is not filed. But the provision I want to highlight is section 249 subsection 4, which provides that the CIT appeal may not admit the appeal unless the tax on returned income has been duly paid before filing the appeal. So as a matter of checklist, this aspect also must be seen that there is the tax on returned income has been duly paid. The other clause of this provision is in case where no return has been filed, especially cases like where 147 has been done and ex parte 144 has been issued, where addition has been made. I remember a matter wherein the CIT appeal objected on this very clause and said that amount has not been paid. Now what was expected is that provision provides that the advance tax on the income computed must be paid. So one view would be from the revenue that, sir, the income which has been assessed by the assessee, by the assessing officer, the advance tax to the extent must be paid before filing of the appeal, which to my mind would not be the correct interpretation. To my mind, the amount which is admitted and which is not disputed, to that extent, yes, advance tax on that, because return cannot be filed due to the time limit which has gone. So advance tax on that account should be paid. That to my mind should be the interpretation of this provision, and not expecting that on the assessed income advance tax should be paid, because that would be in direct contradiction with the very provision, very board circular that 20% demand is only required to be paid, on which stay can be granted. So admitted income which is not in dispute, on that advance tax must be paid. And there is a proviso to this provision that on making an application to the CIT appeal, he has the right to waive this requirement of making payment on account of this clause B with respect to the appeals where return has not been filed. And sir, any defect in the appeal on account of this provision or account of delay or on account of appeal fees not being submitted or power attorney not being there, then whenever that delay is rectified, that would be taken as the date of filing of appeal. And then that delay will have to be explained that why does delay happen. So therefore, the requirement, the prescribed law, the procedure, forms and everything must be strictly adhered to and should be timely completed. The second, another aspect is regarding the statement of facts that I was discussing. So at this time, order at best return is there, but complete assessment file is not available number of times. So while filling the requirement of statement of facts, we should restrict ourselves to the basic facts that assessee file return on so and so at income of so and so. The assessing officer has made addition of disallowances of rupees so and so, wide order dated so and so. Hence the present appeal. So basic minimum facts, because one has to comply with the requirement. And this is more than sufficient to make the compliance. Because any error in the statement of facts on account of non-verification due to paucity of time or non-availability of documents can cause problems when detailed submissions would be filed. So to avoid any such kind of lapse or error, we can plan to only write basic facts which are known, which are clear, and comply the requirement of the form. Going ahead, sir, the grounds of appeal. That is the soul of the appeal. Now, law of pleading demands that the ground should be concise. They should not be argumentative. Grounds of appeal are basically the grievance. कि problem क्या है, issue क्या है, एडिशन है क्या, that is your ground. एडिशन क्यों गलत है, वो ग्राउंड्स की चीज नहीं है. सपोर्टिंग केस लॉज कि असेसिंग ऑफिसर ने ये नहीं देखा, वो आपके सबमिशंस का पार्ट है. that would be in your detailed submission. Grounds is problem क्या है, what is the issue, what is the addition or what is the disallowance in question. That is your ground. So first and foremost, cardinal principle that ground should be concise. They should not be argumentative. The tribunal rules do not allow that. And if grounds are concise, then the tribunal will give directions that first and foremost, you correct your grounds. They are detailed, they are argumentative, you concise your grounds as per the income tax tribunal rules. So the ground should be concise and not argumentative. Then, sir, the second ground that I always advise is that which acts as an umbrella. And why I say it is umbrella? The ground is that the appellant denies its liability to be assessed at income of rupees so and so, as against returned income of rupees so and so, and accordingly denies its liability to pay tax and interest thereon. So my complete variation from the returned income to the assessed income is challenged in this ground. Yes, specific grounds I am discussing. I may not be understood for a moment that we don't need specific grounds. We need specific grounds. But this ground acts as a cushion, which helps in case any ground is missed. Then this ground can be taken a base, कि sir, completely it has been challenged here, and I can very well argue on the basis of this ground. So it acts as a cushion, as a backup to help you, and the SSC is not left wanting for the ground of appeal. And that is why I said it acts as an umbrella which helps as to be as a cushion for anything which is missed out in the grounds of appeal. Then legal grounds. Legal grounds, jurisdictional grounds. Challenging the assumption of jurisdiction under 148 reassessment cases. Challenging jurisdiction in the normal assessments where 143(2) has been issued beyond limitation. So all such legal grounds, jurisdictional grounds must be taken. One may feel while reading an order, assessment order of 147, 143(3) that the assessment, the reopening seems justified. You may feel, you may not feel that there is some much case in it, but the very important aspect is that law keeps developing, and day in, day out, judgments are rendered and law evolves. You never know when another new facet of argument arises, and therefore we must challenge the jurisdictional grounds. That having regard to the facts and circumstances of the case, learned AO has heard in law and on facts in assuming jurisdiction under section 147 and passing the impugned assessment order without complying with the statutory conditions of 147 to 151 capital A of the Act, and by recording incorrect facts and findings. My complete jurisdiction is challenged. All aspects of 147 are challenged. If subsequently nothing is found, you may not argue, but legal grounds must be taken. Number of times question arises, especially in respect of penalty appeal. Penalty appeals where, say, quantum has not been challenged. Small additions, small disallowances, quantums are not challenged. The assessment order is not challenged. Subsequently, penalty is levied. Where the question arises whether in the penalty appeal, can I challenge the addition? Sir, the answer is yes, and to some extent, no. Yes, for the reason that yes, I can challenge the addition to show to the extent that, sir, the addition itself cannot be made, and therefore there is no question of levy of penalty. But in this appeal, the addition will not be deleted. Since assessment order has been accepted, there is no appeal, addition will not be deleted. But in penalty appeal, one can demonstrate by challenging the addition, very addition, that, sir, see, the addition itself could not have been made, and therefore this penalty cannot be levied. I remember, sir, I was arguing a matter before Honorable Tribunal Delhi bench, and that disallowance was on account of 3613. Interest was disallowed under section 3613, not for the purpose of business. The SSC had filed a return at loss, and it was assessed at loss. Disallowance was made, assessment order was not challenged. Subsequently, penalty was levied. CITPL confirmed the penalty. Before tribunal, when I was arguing the matter, I showed from the balance sheet P&L. Sir, kindly see my own funds. They are more than sufficient to make the advance, and therefore this interest which the assessing officer has disallowed is not disallowable. And I remember Honorable Vice President at that time, who was leading the bench, said, if this was such a strong case for you, why did you not file appeal? And I humbly said, my lords, the SSC did not want to litigate the matter. There was no tax liability. And my lords, this is the cost which the SSC is paying for being a non-litigant in this country. And I am before my lords praying for deletion of penalty, because on the face of it, this addition could not have been made. And their lordships in their order even mentioned that there is no case of even the addition. So there is no question of any penalty being levied. Yes, the disallowance cannot be deleted, but penalty on that aspect, that addition itself is bad, on demonstration before the Honorable Tribunal, before CITP, penalty can be deleted. Similarly, another aspect, that whether in the collateral proceedings, can I challenge the jurisdiction? So like we had collateral proceedings of penalty, assessment was, the addition was challenged. Similarly, for example, principal CIT invoking power under section 263 has set aside the reassessment order under 148, 147, where assessing officer had accepted the case of the SSC after reopening and had passed the order accepting the return of the income. Now CIT invokes power under section 263 and sets aside that order. Now I'm filing the appeal before tribunal. Now the question arises whether before the tribunal, can I challenge the jurisdiction of the assessing officer in assuming jurisdiction under 147 of the order, reassessment order, while filing the appeal against order of PCIT under section 263. So whether in the collateral proceedings, the jurisdiction of the original proceedings can be challenged or not? The answer is yes, sir. And the reason behind that is this, that 263, the power is that where the assessment order is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. Both the conditions have to be fulfilled. Now, if I'm able to demonstrate that that very assessment order was passed without jurisdiction, then something which is bad in law, how can that be prejudicial to the interest of the revenue? And on that score, on that ground, Honorable Tribunal in the case of West Life Development, Krishna Kumar Saraf and Shiv Sai Infrastructure, series of judgment have held that in collateral proceedings, the jurisdiction in the original order can be challenged. So these legal grounds, jurisdictional grounds must be taken while preparing the appeal. Specific grounds on addition, say 40 EIA disallowance, that learned AO has heard in law and on facts in making disallowance under section 40 EIA of rupees so and so, and that too by recording incorrect facts and findings and in gross violation of principles from natural justice. My grievance is there. Why is not the answer I want to give here? What is the answer I'm giving? What is the issue? It may be that TDS requirement was not applicable. It is part of my submissions. It may be that I have given the document certified from the chartered accountant of the payee that he has paid taxes. There was no question of 40 EIA disallowance. So all these will be my arguments, not part of my grounds. Grounds is what is my grievance. So similar, all the additions, all the disallowances must be challenged by way of specific grounds. Then specific aspects of the matter, say book rejection. So specific ground must be taken. Matters like in such cases where the aspect of the aspect of Kabul Chawla is applicable, where in cases where the assessment, original assessment has not abated, that is on the date of search, the assessment was not pending and the assessment has not abated. In those cases that Delhi High Court has held and a number of high courts, that addition cannot be made, divorce any incriminating material found during search. So such kind of specific arguments must be taken. That learned AO has heard in law and facts in making the impugned addition under section so and so of rupees so and so, and that too in the absence of any incriminating material found during the course of search. Similarly, sir, the ground of opportunity, principles of natural justice. And it has been our experience number of times that these grounds are missed. One may feel that बहुत सारी opportunity तो मिली है, but it's not only about notices or number of dates, whether the adverse material if any, has been used against the assessee, whether that was confronted to the assessee, whether there was any statement against the assessee, whether the cross-examination was given or not. So we must, as a matter of practice, take a comprehensive ground on opportunity in our grounds of appeal. That learned AO has earned law on facts in making the impugned additions or disallowances in the impugned assessment order, and that too in gross violation of principles of natural justice, and without confronting the adverse material, and without granting the opportunity of cross-examination. So ground on principles of natural justice must be there. Then in respect of additions, we can have a ground that in any view of the matter and in any case, that in any view of the matter and in any case, the learned AO has heard in law on facts in making the impugned addition under section so and so, which is bad in law. So if any aspect of the issue is left out in the main ground, this ground covers it. That in any view of the matter and in any case, this addition is bad. Then, sir, interest. Consequential ground must be taken, can be put. Prepaid taxes, the credit grant of credit of TDS, TCS, advance tax credit ground must be taken. And this will come to light once we compare the computation made by AO with the return of income. That is why I said return must be examined at the time of filing of appeal. Additional grounds. Additional grounds, the power is there with the CIT appeals as well as the Honorable Tribunal to entertain additional grounds. The additional grounds on legal aspects, legal issues which do not require any fresh investigation of facts. Honorable Supreme Court in NTPC 229 ITR page 383, 229 ITR page 383, reiterated by Honorable Supreme Court in Singhad Education Society 397 ITR page 344, and series of decisions wherein it has been held that legal ground can be taken even for the first time before Honorable Supreme Court. But I may not be understood for a moment to say that even if legal ground is not taken, it is okay. We must take it in the original memorandum of appeal. Even if some ground has been missed, legal ground which do not require any fresh investigation of facts, then that can be taken up at any stage. Again, in respect of development of law, there must be some aspect which was not there earlier. Now it is there. Ground can be taken on legal aspects. So additional grounds can be taken. The CIT appeal may refuse the ground admission of the ground if it is found that the omission of the ground was willful or unreasonable. So generally, in the interest of justice, as a matter of practice, legal additional grounds are admitted. Additional claims. Now, before assessing officer, return has been filed, revised return time has expired, and now there is some additional claim in respect of, say, some deduction under 54B, 54F, or any other deduction which is to be claimed. Now, Honorable Supreme Court in Goet says very clear that assessing officer cannot entertain otherwise by way of a revised return or a claim made in the return. So, number of times when we make a claim before the assessing officer by way of a letter, the assessing officer writes that Honorable Supreme Court in Goet have categorically held that without a return, the claim cannot be made. I remember recently had an occasion to deal with a matter, sir, wherein the assessee, he had an account in US, another account in Hong Kong. Now, funds were transferred from US account to the Hong Kong account by the assessee. At the time of filing of return, by mistake, the credit which was there appearing in the Hong Kong dollar account, that was shown as miscellaneous income in the computation of income. There was other income and it was clubbed with that. That amount was shown as miscellaneous income. while assessment was going on, assessee found that this was merely a credit transfer from one account to the other account. There is no element of income. And it was submitted. Okay, sir, there is no element of income. This is from my one account to the other account. And this claim may please be allowed. This amount need not be taxed. The assessing officer denied. And by applying, go it say that I cannot entertain this claim. So, yes, there are fetters on the power of the assessing officer. He may not be able to entertain the claim. However, Honorable Delhi High Court in J Parabolic 306 ITR page 42. 306 ITR page 42 have held that the limitation which has been laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court in Goetze matter is on the assessing officer and not on the appellate authorities. And therefore, the CITPL, the tribunal can entertain a fresh claim. So, if there is any fresh claim, ground can be taken in the appeal memo and accordingly claim can be raised before the learned CITPL or tribunal. I remember, sir, a matter, and this is linked with that aspect which I was discussing on penalty. Now, in that matter, assessee had filed return and there was some loss on MCX commodities. It was debited in the penal account. And in the computation, that amount was added back in the profit and loss account, and the capital gains head, it was carried forward. Now, in that case, surprisingly, along with other additions, other issues which were going on in that case, this disallowance was made by the assessing officer. Even though suo motu assessee already had made it in the return of income. Assessing officer made the disallowance. In quantum, CITPL confirmed it. The tribunal confirmed it in quantum, and the matter went before Honorable. It was admitted by the Honorable High Court. Penalty was levied. AO levied penalty on that issue, along with the others. CITPL confirmed the penalty, and the matter came to us at the stage of tribunal for fighting the penalty. Sir, when I was going through the matter, then I found that this amount is already disallowed by the SAC in the return of income, computation of income. And surprisingly, that argument was never taken before the other authorities in the earlier proceedings at any stage. Now, a matter which has reached in the quantum till High Court and in penalty is now at the tribunal stage, and an argument on the face of it which goes on to show that the amount has already been disallowed by me. So I had to check it thrice and whether I was correct or there was something wrong going on. This was a matter before Honorable ITAT Amritsar. I went to argue the matter and I started my case that, my lords, the amount on which penalty has been levied is a disallowance which I already suo motu have made in my return of income. And therefore, this disallowance could not have been made, and there is no question of levy of penalty. And the honorable bench was also was very surprised. How is this happening? You are in penalty before tribunal, and this is now coming here for the first time. And I was like, my lords, I will only refer my computation, my penal account, and the assessment order. No other document I will refer. And I'll demonstrate before my lords. And we showed. And the Honorable Tribunal said that they went on to delete the penalty. And they laid down the various factual aspects of the matter that the amount has already been disallowed by the SAC. So even in penalty proceedings, one can lead evidences to show that the addition is bad. So, sir, regarding the grounds of appeal, these aspects I wanted to discuss. Now, return submission. Paper book. We all know CIT appeal, National Faceless Appeal Center is now there. Online submissions have to be made. Even assessments also, faceless is going on. So the drafting has gained a lot of importance. We won't be sitting in front of the table to explain the matters. Yes, option of personal hearing is there. which would be conducted through virtual hearing by the commissioner. And earlier, the request that could have been made, which was kept discretionary, has now been made mandatory. If the assessee asks for the personal hearing, the CITPL and FAC is bound to give personal hearing. The word uses shall in the provisions of the statute.
अभी ये 2 क्वेश्चन चैट बॉक्स में क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर में है Q&A
सर
में।
क्वेश्चंस बाद में ले लें सर।
हाँ बिल्कुल, मैंने
हाँ।
मैंने कहा यदि आप लेना चाहें तो आप ले सकते हैं।
सर एक साथ लास्ट में ले लेंगे सर।
ठीक है, ओके।
Questions I will take. There are more questions in chat also. Questions are there in question and answer box also.
ओके,
Yes.
ओके।
Yes, sir. So, while preparing the submissions, first and foremost, the positive case must be proved. That what is our case? What are the facts of the case? What is the issue? Then the facts of the case, and what is how the claim or deduction is allowable. Positive case. My submissions on facts, then those facts supported by the law, evidences which are duly properly compiled in the paper book and duly referenced in my submissions. And then the law on that. So complete positive case is proved. And after that, the adverse observations of the assessing officer should be picked one by one from the assessment order, and reply should be given that this is wrong because of this is wrong because of this. And the 90% आपका जवाब जो आपने positive case बनाया है उसी से मिलेगा आपको. So in that structured manner is what I advise to prepare the written submission, and the paper book should be a separate, submission should be separate, duly referenced, duly paged, page numbering should be there and properly referenced. Coming to the condonation of delay, sir. Now, yes, we all make our efforts to make sure that the appeal is filed in time, but there are circumstances, as I discussed earlier in respect of 143(1), that there can be situations when delay can occur. In that case, CITPL tribunal have the power to condone the delay and admit the appeal. The application for condonation of delay. It should bring out clearly and properly what is the cause, what is the reason of delay, and the reason should be supported by proper evidences. Merely stating a fact is there was medical issue at end of the filing, the counsel filing the appeal, or somebody in the office of the counsel of the assessee who was filing the appeal, and therefore there was delay, then it should be evidenced with medical record. If there is proper, reasonable and sufficient cause for the delay, then the delay must be condoned, and it is generally condoned. Where it is found or the court finds that the delay is a byproduct of a deliberate attempt to delay the proceedings with a malified intent to delay the disposal of the appeal, then they may not condone the delay. But as Honorable Supreme Court held in the case of Master Katiji, 167 ITR page 471, that when technical considerations are pitted against substantial justice, then substantial justice must prevail. An honorable tribunal, they tend to take a liberal view in light of substantial justice must be done. A number of times question arises, sir, what is the benchmark when one can feel that yes, this is a reasonable cause? This is a sufficient cause for delay being condoned. So to my mind, when the reason is such that one may feel yes, it will appeal to the conscience of a person with ordinary prudence. कि हाँ, बात तो सही है, हो सकता है. Then that would be a benchmark that one may say that yes, it is a reasonable cause. So in 263 matters, now what happens is CIT set aside the matter. Finding can be, he says, AO, all right, do it once again. Or they can be, he crystallizes the additional disallowance in the order under section 263. Number of times we have seen that he has given the direction to make the addition. That yes, this addition has to be made. But somehow assessee is under the impression that all right, assessing officer will do it again. When he does, then we will file appeal. Whereas the cause of action arises against the order of CIT, and that appeal is not filed. So one must take a very careful note of that. And I remember arguing a matter in similar context. And in that case, the assessing officer issued 143(2) and said, all right, what do you want to say in this matter? And assessee replied, AO made the addition, we filed appeal to CIT appeal in second round. CIT appeal says, AO only followed the CIT, you did not file appeal. There is nothing wrong in the order of the AO. Then before tribunal, the appeal was filed. And while continuation of delay was prepared, we submitted. Okay, my lords, may kindly see the assessment order also. He issued 143(2). He asked for the explanation as if he is doing an assessment and submitted. The assessee submitted reply. So a bona fide belief was there with the assessee that assessing officer was doing the assessment again. It is not a case assessee was not vigilant, he was negligent. It is not that case. So if the assessee is vigilant, it is only a wrong remedy which has been taken. Then in such cases, the delay may please be condoned, and accordingly it is generally condoned. So the application should be speaking and should be properly evidenced. And if required, in cases where it is circumstantial evidences which are being pleaded, then it should be supported by an affidavit, duly sworn affidavit. Additional evidence is the last aspect which I'll take up, and I'll hand over to sir. Additional evidences. Though I started my practice, sir, I learned assessment is the foundation, and the evidences should be brought on record before the first court, that is the assessing officer. Questionnaire is received, we should visualize, anticipate, whatever best is possible, bring it on record and file it on record, so that because evidences which are filed before the assessing officer, I can rely on them as a matter of right before authorities in appeal. But something which is not before the assessing officer, then I would be required to file a petition for additional evidence. And another hurdle is added. First, admission of the evidences, and then they can be relied upon. So the right which I could have easily exercised directly to rely upon those evidences, had I filed it in the assessment, is lost, and a hurdle is added to first get those evidences admitted. And sir, as I learned, if you are in a situation where additional evidences are required and which are required to be admitted, then you take it, my friend, half the battle is lost. First, admission has to be done, and then you can ask the CIT to go through those evidences. Yes, there can be circumstances where evidences could not be placed, and that is why Rule 46(a) provides for 4 clauses where AO did not give you sufficient opportunity, where assessee was prevented by sufficient cause, where he did not ask for that evidence, or where did not let you adduce those evidences. So if there is lack of opportunity or sufficient cause that I could not bring evidence on record, then yes, additional evidence are bound to be admitted. Our endeavor should be bring the evidences on record at the earliest. However, in cases it is not, then the proper additional evidence petition should be made. It should be properly detailed with facts and supported by evidences. In case of medical grounds, medical record should be placed, and accordingly our additional evidence petitions should be properly made. And one last aspect which I want to highlight is the number of times we have seen additional evidences are placed in the paper book, in which documents which were filed before AO are also placed. And with utmost respect, I submit a casual application is made for admission of additional evidences, and the additional evidences are not identified. And then when the CITP does not deal with those evidences, one may feel, sir, why did he not deal with them? So, sir, if a proper application is not made and CITP does not admit those evidences, then those evidences cannot be pressed. And therefore, the additional evidences, even if they're made part of the paper book, they should be properly identified in the application, detailed application supported by evidences. And if possible, it should be sent along with the application itself, apart from the paper book. And evidences which go to the root of the matter are to be admitted, and Honorable Delhi High Court in the case of Virgin Securities, 332 YTR, page 396. 332 YTR, page 396 have held that evidence which go to the root of the matter in view of the substantial justice should be admitted. But undue delay, there being no explanation for that, then it may be a problem. So the application should be a separate application, properly worded, properly detailed. Why, what was the reason that the evidence were not available? Why it could not be filed before AO, and should be supported by evidence. With this, sir, I'll give quietus to my deliberation, and over to you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Somil,
Thank
for
you.
such comprehensive. The time, of course, is a constraint, because this is the topic on which you can speak for a couple of hours. So, first of all, I'll take up the questions, and then I'll touch upon certain phases of the appeal also. So, one question which was put by Shri Atul Puri has been responded by me, and it must have come earlier. Now, another question is from Mr. M. Nandakumar. He says whether the SSC can take additional grounds on account of a missed claim or exempted item during the course of appeal. Yes, of course. Section 250, subsection 5 of the Income Tax Act, now it gives you a right to file additional grounds, but then the only limitation on that right is that you'll have to convince that first appellate authority that your prayer is not unreasonable and this omission is not willful. Kindly mind these two expressions which have been used by legislature in subsection 5 of section 250. That your omission to include a ground in the grounds of appeal is not willful, and your prayer to admit this additional ground is not unreasonable. So you'll have to make out a case. I always say, and which Somil has also emphasized, that whenever you make any petition, whether this petition is for admission of additional ground, whether this petition for admission of the additional evidences, whether this petition is seeking the indulgence of the appellate authority to condone the delay, whether this petition is even for seeking the adjournment, whether this petition is imploring or I would say is seeking the indulgence of the appellate authority to grant you a stay, or for that matter any petition which you move, it must be comprehensively worded, setting out your case supported with evidence. And if you ask me to summarize as to what do I mean by all these things, is that your petition must be drafted in such a manner that in case tomorrow it is rejected, you can, based upon this very petition, based upon these very evidences and pleadings, you can knock at the door of the High Court. That should be the benchmark. But anyway, so I was on this issue. Yes, SSC can take additional grounds on account of missed claim or exempted item. Somil made a very important point that if there is a ground which was purely legal, goes to the root of the matter, does not require fresh facts to be investigated. Now, Supreme Court in a couple of occasions have said that yes, appellate authority is duty bound to admit and allow the admission of that ground. But then if it involves some ground involving disputed question of facts, then you will have to cross that hurdle, that your omission to include was not willful and your prayer is not unreasonable. Can a stand be changed, like applicability of MAT in CIT appeal or ITAT, based on the latest judgment for other SSCs of same industry? Yes, of course. Now, if there is some judicial decision now has come, obviously that must be on the aspect of law. Therefore, if based upon that, if you want to take out your case, and then if you make a petition for admission of additional ground, based upon the decision in some other case, then obviously your omission to include that ground was not willful, could not be found willful, and therefore appellate authority. And your prayer is reasonable, is not unreasonable. So this is a reply in response to this question. Now, Jasjit Singh Naran sir's ka question hai, perusal of the above would clearly show, I do not know what above, perusal of the clearly show that documentary evidences submitted with regard to prove the identity, capacity, and credit worthiness of the party and genuineness of the transactions is arbitrarily rejected. In fact, the learned has not disputed about the documentary evidences submitted, but he has given some irrelevant reasons for treating the amount received as unexplained credit. He states that the entity so and so does not have its own business and only source of income is being share of profit. So his question is now whether the action of the assessing officer in invoking the provision of section 68 on the facts of this case is justified or not. Now, as all of us know, under section 68, the initial onus is on the assessee to prove the nature and source of the credit which is appearing in the books of account. And if the assessing officer is not satisfied, then he may make addition. Now, when it says that the assessing officer is not satisfied, that doesn't mean that the assessing officer has got the absolute power. Now, his decision or his dissatisfaction is subject to the judicial review by the appellate authority. Therefore, when he or the assessing officer makes the assessment order by invoking section 68 on flimsy grounds, then this is open to challenge before the CIT appeal, and then you can convince the CIT appeal that the discretion, which was the judicial discretion and which was vested in the assessing officer, was improperly exercised by him, and for this reason he is improperly exercised, and CIT appeal may be convinced, and still CIT appeal is also not convinced, then the tribunal is there to be convinced. So if I always equate the situation like this. Now, many times my chartered accountant friends ask, now could assessing officer have done this? Whether he could have done this in law or not, that is the question. He has done it, but then his order is not final. It is subject to judicial review. If he has not exercised his discretion in accordance with law, the first appellate authority will set it right. If even first appellate authority doesn't set it right, then you feeling aggrieved against the order of the first appellate authority, now will knock at the door of the tribunal, and there is a hierarchy till the stage of Supreme Court. So this consideration now which appears to have been picked from some assessment order, it appears to be on the face of it, because all facts are not before me, it appears on the face of it a very what should I say, arbitrary, flimsy ground for treating this transaction of the credit as ingenuine, and therefore you have got a good case before the appellate authority. Now, these were the two questions here. Kindly check and take my question from chat box. Okay, I am taking. Yes, chat box. There are questions. Oh.
Last 3 messages, sir.
Okay. Can giving less time, giving less time to reply be a ground and a denial? Yes, of course. Natural justice, inadequate or absence of time, both are the part and the facets of the natural justice. So even the time which has been given, which is less, now can be the ground, but then you will have to prove it. Why is it less? So it depends upon the facts of each case. Now, at several points of time, the assessing officer have given you sufficient opportunity, and still the compliance has not come. When the last opportunity was given at the fag end, when the limitation was approaching, say for 2 days, then you cannot be heard saying that the last time he has given me opportunity 2 days only. So it depends upon the appreciation of all the facts and circumstances put together, the background in which a particular proceeding has been conducted, then the decision. The other day, only day was yesterday, me and Somin were arguing matter in Delhi High Court, where the final show cause came on 8th of December 2022, giving 7 days time of 15th of December 2022. SSE sought an adjournment for 3 days. to which reply was not given. So SSE probably thought, now since no reply has come, therefore he must upload his reply as early as possible. So he tried to approach that portal on 16th of December with his reply, and then he found that the e-filing tab on the portal was closed by the assessing officer. So he filed his grievance at that point of time. He filed, or he shot an email to the principal chief commissioner, and by enclosing the copy of the reply which he has prepared to the show cause. The order was passed on 24th, and assessment order was passed by raising demand of 26 odd crores of rupees. So we, instead of taking that assessment order through the appellate mechanism, which could have been quite delayed remedy, we knocked at the door of the High Court by way of a writ on account of the absence of the principle of natural justice. Now, time barring was on 31st December. You had given me time till 15th. Okay, I could not comply with. I sought merely 3 days time. You chose even not to reply that. Then you did not pass the order on 16th. You passed order, you took your own time for 8 days. So had you given me time of 3 days which I was pleading, then the heavens would not have fallen. So the High Court quashed that assessment order. Quash means set aside the assessment order with the direction to consider this reply which the SSE is uploaded and give a personal hearing in case the SSE chooses to be heard personally. So giving less time to reply. So natural justice, what are the principles of natural justice? Number one, nobody should be condemned unheard. That condemnation unheard may be on account of absence or maybe on account of inadequacy of the time. The second is, nobody can be judged in his own cause. And the third is that every order must be a speaking order. It should reflect the mental process with which that order has been passed, so that the reader of that order may not only be knowing the conclusion of that order, but then the mental process of reaching to that conclusion should also be made known to the person. So these are the 3 principles of natural justice. Yes. Next is, can the WhatsApp chat, a very good question, seized by the team between the employees and the directors of a real estate company involving cash transactions be used against the SSE, where he is innocent, unaware about the cash transactions. Addition has been made by the assessment unit in buyer's total income, who is the plot owner under section 69. So you can call that buyer innocent to this extent that the discovery of the evidence against him has not been found from his possession and control. It has been found from the control and possession of the company, probably the seller. It's not coming out, but from the seller. Now it depends upon whether it was a case of search. Then of course presumptions cannot be drawn against that employee, against this owner, against this person who probably or who is alleged to have made payment in cash. But definitely that evidence now which has come into possession of the assessing officer may be of lower quality insofar as this person is concerned, of course is liable to be confronted to this person. And then depending upon the nature of chat, to what extent that chat is corroborated with some other evidence, it depends upon the facts of each case. Now whether a particular evidence now is giving rise to this inference that the cash payment has been made by this person is a mixed question of fact and law. Therefore, though there is no presumption against this person because it has not been found from his possession and control, has been found from the possession and control of third person, but then third person is also not totally stranger. that company also may be one of the parties to this deal. Therefore, that evidence has got some value, but then depending, and that evidence is liable to be confronted to this SSE. And having regard to the overall appreciation of the entire gamut of that evidence, then the view will have to be taken by any judicial authority as to whether the addition needs to be made in the hands of this owner on the ground that he purportedly made the cash payment. Before CIRP was initiated under IBC, the company has deducted TDS from my salary. Company did not deposit TDS. Company only shared computation at that time instead of formal form number 16. I had filed my return and paid tax on rest of my income, whatever was due. The return was accepted, but since TDS was not deposited by company, demand raised. But earlier it was not followed up properly by me, and since then whatever refund is getting due to me is being adjusted against the demand of TDS not deposited by company. Worst part, that salary is also not paid. Claim has already been admitted by RP. My salary is shown in balance. Now the company too is under liquidation. Any ground I can take authorities to take up with personally obliged best regard. देखिए, there are now catena of judicial decision. The first decision which comes to my mind is from the Guwahati High Court in the case of Om Prakash, and it is reported in 242 ITR, where the High Court has held, and there are then thereafter several High Court's decisions. Once the tax has been deducted, then the tax which has been deducted by the employer now cannot be claimed back from the employee. The department has got every right to collect it from that erring or defaulting employer or from the deductor who has deducted, because when an employer or for that matter anybody deducts TDS, he holds that amount in trust, and therefore there are several judicial decisions that this demand cannot be recovered from the employee. But then you will have to probably go in for the writ in case some demands have been raised subject to the laches and negligence. I mean, it appears that there has been considerable delay at your end in pursuing a remedy, because when you go to the High Court by way of a writ, then your action cannot be or must not be said to be a case of latch or negligence. If there is undue delay, then this exceptional remedy which is available to a citizen by way of a writ, I mean, has to be exercised expeditiously as possible. You have to overcome that latch or negligence. In case of breach of principle of natural justice by AO, like using material correct by AO in back or SSE without confronting him and making addition on the basis of this material solely, would CIT normally remand the matter to AO for fresh confrontation of the evidence to SSE, or would normally CIT quash not? CIT would not quash, because the CIT appeal, you know, has got coterminous power of the assessing officer. So if some procedural irregularity now has been committed by the assessing officer, Delhi High Court now says in one of its decisions that it was incumbent upon the CIT appeal, which is the first appellate authority, to cure that irregularity. Therefore, CIT appeal would not quash the assessment order merely for the reason of the non-observance of the principle of natural justice. He would say, either I remand the matter for this limited purpose to the assessing officer, get the remand report, or even I have got the power to do the investigation or to do those things which the assessing officer ought to have done, has not done. Now I will do. Okay, so this is that. In case SSE did not file return in due time, can we go condonation of delay under section 119(2)(b) or wait for notice under section 147 for claiming refund? They are used, of course, under section 119. I mean, you can file any petitions to the board, and the board may be persuaded to ponder and consider judiciously your claim. But then 147 is not necessary because 147 is not your advantage proceedings. Section 147 proceedings are to your prejudice. So if 147 now is 148 notice is issued, there may be refund, but these proceedings are not considered as proceedings beneficial to the taxpayer. So under section 119, you can file a petitions to the board and then take recourse to this. Okay. Now it appears there are more questions in question and answer. No, there are no questions. So
No.
I think Brajesh, I have given answers
Yes,
to all the
sir.
questions. Yes. Now Sandeep Jindal ji का एक question और आ गया, and SSC wrongly mentioned 10 of employer while filing ITR. Demand raised TDS is reflected in 26 years. Time limit under section 154 is over. Please advise. So you file appeal. You file appeal against that order, which the demand was raised, and seek condonation by putting, as Somilas put it, good and sufficient reasons as to what has caused this delay by not making your claim in time. Yes. Now, though it is 6:55, I can take issues and appeal, but then couple of issues relating to the Supreme Court's decisions, which is affecting all and sundry, that I would like to take. So we made a reference of the Supreme Court's decision in checkmate. As the name suggests, that SSCs have been checkmated on account of the delayed payment of employees' contributions collected by the employer from their workers and employees on account of the Provident Fund, the ESI. Now in 1987, one amendment was made. Not one amendment, a couple of amendments were made under the Income Tax Act. The first amendment which was made was under the definition of income under section 2 clause 24 and subclause Roman small 10 to include in the definition of income the contributions collected or deducted by the employer from the employees from their salaries and wages. This was a very stringent labor welfare measure, fiscal measure resorted to by the legislature through the Income Tax Act by amending the definition of income. The moment an employer collects or deducts from his employees' salaries and wages, the Provident Fund, ESI, or for that matter any other contributions, the legislature, or for that matter Income Tax Act, now started saying with effect from 1/4/1988 that it will be treated as your income. It will be your income. Then a corresponding deduction was given under section 36 subsection 1 clause small Roman 5a, read with its explanation, that this income, which is so treated as income, will be allowed to you as a deduction if you happen to pay such contributions of the employees to the credit of these employees by making over the payment on or before the due date. And which due date? The due date is prescribed under the Provident Fund Act and the ESI. Provident Fund Act and ESI Act, now they have been brought at par insofar as the time limit is concerned, the 15 days from the end of the month. But then in matter of employers' contributions also, initial provisions were also like this with respect to employers' contribution. That even the employers' contributions will not be allowed to you unless you paid it on or before the due dates as prescribed under these acts. But as per Kelkar Committee's recommendations, the amendment was made in 2004 or 2003. That if these payments are made on or before the due date of filing of return, then also we will allow you the deduction. And the legislature made this amendment in respect of employers' contribution prospectively, 1/4/2004. But then the matter was taken before the courts and said that though the legislature, parliament has said that this amendment would come into effect from 1/4/2004, but then this amendment is a curative amendment. This amendment which has been made is in order to mitigate the hardships which the employers are facing, and therefore even if the parliament says that it will come into effect from 1/4/2004, but it should be treated as a clarificatory amendment, it should be treated as a curative amendment, and therefore this amendment should be treated to be coming into effect as if from the day when this section was brought, that is from 1/4/2008, 1/4/1988. Now, when employees' contributions to deposits dates are concerned, no respect, no respite, no relaxation was given by the legislature. But then the judges interpreted. Judges said employees and employers, they are the different sides of the same coin, and therefore the same due date which has been enlarged for the purpose of employers' contribution should be made applicable in case of employees' contribution. That position was going on until Finance Act amendment made by Finance Act 2021. But Supreme Court in checkmates the latest decision by my Lord Justice Bhatt, a 3 judges bench decision, have held that since there is a material difference between the employer's contribution and employee's contribution, in as much as employer's contribution is your responsibility as an employer, but employee's contribution is the contribution which you hold for and on behalf of the employees as a trust money. And therefore, if the legislature has chosen to treat these employees' contributions and employers' contributions on different pedestals, so there is a reason, rational justification for it. And that is how and that is why the Supreme Court in checkmates decision and has held that insofar as employees' contributions are concerned, because of the nature of employees' contributions being in the nature of the trust money for and on behalf of the employees by the employer, and therefore that expended time limit as interpreted by various high courts, though some high courts were not in favor of such expanded interpretation, so that expanded interpretations, liberal interpretations done by various high courts, including by the Delhi High Court, did not find favor from the Supreme Court 3 judges bench decision in checkmate. I remember my Lord Justice Bhatt, as he there was in Delhi High Court, in Bharat Hotels case, had already decided on the similar lines as the High Court judge. Matter came before the Supreme Court, much water had flown since then, but then the very reasoning adopted by my Lord Justice Bhatt as the presiding judge of the Delhi High Court in case of Bharat Hotels, now the same reasoning, was accepted. Not same reasoning, but then the reasoning which was adopted by Delhi High Court was further expanded in this checkmates decision. Therefore, insofar as employees' contributions are concerned, even the legislature, though wanted to bring this clarification with effect from 1/4/2022, now, but because of this decision of Honorable Supreme Court in checkmate, now the position of law insofar as the employees' contribution is concerned, now has been restored right from 1/4/1988 in this very manner, that employees' contributions due date will be treated as the due date which has been prescribed under these respective labor welfare legislation. So, where this issue of employees' contributions is emanating from an assessment order passed under section 143(3) and is at different stages of the appellate forum, then this issue is lost and appears to be lost forever. But where where the adjustments have been made under section 143(1) based on the tax auditor's reporting. Now, whether that adjustment could be made under section 143(1) or not, that question is still being litigated before various benches of the tribunal, and there is a stark and spate of judicial cleavages on this issue. Even after the Supreme Court's decision in checkmate, various benches of the tribunal across the country now have adopted different interpretation as to the scope of adjustment which can be made under section 143(1) based on the tax auditor's mere reporting of the delay. Delhi benches have taken so far the decision against the taxpayer. Mumbai benches have taken in favor Pune against SSC. So when my chartered accountants friends ask me now whether this issue should be treated as closed forever, then my take is, as Swamil has also said, the law keeps on evolving. Therefore, keep your claims alive. More particularly, when that claim is as a result of adjustment made under section 143(1). I have got a very strong feeling that because of the judicial cleavages of opinion coming from various benches, the divergent decisions coming from various benches, constitution of a special bench probably is needed. Larger bench is needed to give at least the quietus to this divergence of decisions on this aspect on the scope of adjustment under section 143(1) is concerned. Therefore, even if Delhi benches are against, but then this issue since has to attain some finality in the matter of 143(1). Of course, 143(3) now Supreme Court's checkmate's decision has checkmated all. But 143(1) still there is some ray of hope, and but then that ray of hope can culminate into the real hope if that is kept at some stage of litigation. So my advice in that regard would be that it should be kept open and litigation may continue depending upon the quantum, of course, because many times the quantum is not much and SSC may think, I mean, what to incur good money, I mean, for something, I mean, for some cause which ultimately may turn to be the bad cause. So, but then this is the way forward according to me in the light of the checkmate's decision. There are other facets also in 43B, sorry, in employees' contributions also, and even in those cases where the additions of the disallowances have been made under section 143(3), because there are a couple of decisions of the tribunal now which says that 15 days from the end of the month, which month? Whether the month in which the salary had accrued or end of the month is the month in which the salaries have come to be disbursed. So where there is no delay, but not the significant delay, then this argument is still open. And in that situation, recently in Aroma Aromatics, the chartered accountant concerned took this argument, but somehow, unfortunately, this argument was not dealt with by the tribunal. So even this aspect now is open. Then another aspect in case of 143(1) is open as to whether in a subsequent decision of the Supreme Court, now can be said to be causing one error at the time when that intimation was passed. Though one of the view of the Supreme Court, one of the views which the Supreme Court had held is this, that Supreme Court does not lay down the law or does not create the law, but then it reiterates the law as it always was. Therefore, according to this view, once the Supreme Court decision has come, even if this decision was not there when that adjustment was made in 143(1), it will relate back, because as I said a little while ago, the Supreme Court reiterates the law as it always was. But there is another Supreme Court's decision in MAPCO Builders, which says that even a subsequent decision of the Supreme Court now cannot be said to be enabling an assessing officer to make adjustment on that day. So again, even on this point as to what is the effect of the Supreme Court's decision, subsequent Supreme Court decision, Supreme Court itself is divided. Therefore, the ray of hope should not be lost insofar as the litigation is concerned, and all these facets should be taken note of, and then should be, as you never know, as Somil has said, and I reiterate that the law keeps on evolving, developing, is a dynamic, and therefore you never know. I mean, so this is my takeaway insofar as this decision is concerned. Then the decision which is also very important is SM Overseas Private Limited. Now there were series of Supreme Court's decisions of late which have come right from Ashish Agrawal, now which went against the taxpayers. But then out of that desert of adverse orders, now this decision of SM Overseas has come as a pleasant surprise. And what is this decision? Now it says that an assessment reopened during the pendency of even the 154 proceeding is not valid. Now it is settled law, and all of you may be aware that if an assessment is reopened when the assessment itself is open or pending, now that reopening is bad, because something which is already open now cannot be reopened, and that is what the Supreme Court had said long back, and that is the consistent position insofar as the law is concerned. But whether the pendency of 154 proceeding now can be equated to the pendency of assessment proceeding was the question. Of course, the department's view was that 154 proceeding pendency is not equivalent to the pendency of the assessment proceeding. But then Supreme Court in this decision has held that if there was 154 proceeding which was pending, which was not dropped by passing an order, now during the pendency of 154 proceeding, no reassessment can be done. I tell you, whenever now everything has gone online, otherwise in the past, whenever there used to be the challenge to the reopening of the proceeding, I always insisted, even to this extent, I would say that my clients used to wonder, and even my chartered accountant friends used to wonder when they used to see me in CR building. I made it a point to inspect the departmental assessment record. And departmental assessment record inspections then would have revealed so many interesting faces. I remember in one of the cases, because since the instances which I am quoting has got relevance to the issue which has been decided by the Supreme Court, therefore I am a little bit dealing. It was coming out from the assessment reassessment order that it was opened on the basis of some audit objection. When I insisted as usual the inspection of departmental assessment record, and when I did inspect the departmental assessment record, and I found that the assessing officer who passed the initial assessment order, when was given audit objection by the audit wing of the tax department, that assessing officer resisted that audit objection tooth and nail. But then later on, he gave way. Now, during that correspondence between the audit wing and the assessing officer, of course, through the normal official channel, now several interesting things were diverged. Assessing officer said, no, he has seen this, this audit objection is not valid. Now, in the face of such amount of correspondence, maybe between the interdepartmental correspondence, and if the copies of that correspondence has come to you, then of course that constitutes an important piece of evidence, because that is part of official record. In many cases, we find that on the issue for which the reopening is sought to be done, the assessing officers would have issued notices under section 154. Later on, when they found that this is not a mistake apparent from record, and therefore they should instead resort to section 147, then they switched their action to 147, but then without dropping that 154 proceedings. So in those kind of situations, now this decision of the Supreme Court and SM overseas now would come in hand, because this is also one view, and now which has been reaffirmed by this decision, that even a 154 proceeding is part of the larger assessment proceeding. And if 154 is pending, then the assessment can be said to be pending. If assessment is pending, then reopening cannot be done. So this is a very important proposition which can be made use of by all of us. Now it is 7:15. No, there are other decisions like New Nobel, the Supreme Court's decision in case of the societies and trusts running educational institutions. Now this decision has also given several reasons for such institutions to ponder and to adjust. That decision was rendered, though, in the context of section 10, clause 23C, subclause small Roman 6. Now, which says that the income from a university or educational institution which exists solely for education and not for profit will not be included in the total income of the person. So, New Nobel applied to the competent authority seeking approval under section 1023C clause 6, which was rejected, and which was rejected on the ground that your object clause are much beyond the educational objects, and therefore you do not exist solely for educational purpose. There was one more ground taken by the Supreme Court, that if there is some state law which is also applicable on you being a public charitable institution, then also you need to be registered under that state law. And in case you are not registered under that state law, even that can be taken into account by the competent authority while granting approval. So 1023C6 uses two expressions very prominently, that you should exist solely for education and you should not exist for profit. Solely, Supreme Court has said, it's not predominantly. Solely means exclusively, not even primarily. Therefore, the Supreme Court has said, if there are other objects which you may not be carrying on, but then the very fact the objects do exist, then you will not be said to be existing solely for education. It's very important proposition. Therefore, those educational institutions who want to go in for approval under section 1023C6, kindly mind it, I am not talking of educational societies or trusts which are registered under section 12AA or 12AB, because there may be several objects. But 1023C6 uses the expression solely. Therefore, at least these charitable institutions, running educational institutions, seeking approval under section 1023C6 must ensure that their objects must be exclusively on education or other objects which are incidental to the education. But then if there are objects which are incidental to the education and there are no main objects relating to the education, then also there is a problem. So there may be incidental to educational activities objects, but then they have to be in addition to the main objects of education. Because suppose if there is a charitable trust or institution which says that we will finance the education, we will give free scholarships, we will publish books, and then we will, this is also educational, but then they are incidental to the main objects of education. So they can exist in your object clause provided the main object is that of or relating to the education. So therefore, those trusts and institutions which have the objects other than education now will have to amend their object. And kindly see, new novel Supreme Court has said that our this decision will come into effect prospectively, and meaning thereby that the Supreme Court wants, because Supreme Court was also conscious that they are developing a new jurisprudence altogether, and to which these educational institutions were not in line with earlier because of the then prevailing law as enunciated by Queen's Educational Society or Adityanar or several other decisions. Therefore, the Supreme Court has given somewhat indirectly a time for these charitable institutions to adjust themselves and modify their objects. The not for profit. Not for profit, this expression is not there in section 11 and 12. Not for profit is there in section 1023C6. But then we used to understand that even if there are profits, but those profits, if were capable of being applied solely for educational purposes, those profits could not be withdrawn or used by the promoters or used by the trustees or the managers for their personal gains. Then also we used to treat, and that used to be the jurisprudence, then those educational institutions are not for profit. But not for profit now has been given a very specific thrust by this decision of new Nobel to say that if surplus is incidental, that is all right. But if by taking into account the entire operations, the first feel comes that it is being carried out with a profit motive, then you cannot be said to be not for profit. There is no single test which can be said to be available in order to decide, but then the cumulative factors taken into account should not indicate that you exist for profit. So this has to be taken care of. Then the lordships further held that these charitable institutions are entitled to carry business, but that business should be incidental to the attainment of education, the main purpose. And for that they have referred to the 7th proviso to section 1023C6 and subsection 4 capital A of section 11. So if there is educational institution which exists solely for education, but if there are other objects and other activities like transport facility to the students, like maintenance of hostel. So this new noble's decision says that these activities can be conducted, can be carried out because they are incidental to the attainment of the main object education, provided you maintain separate books of account. Because they are the requirements of the 7th proviso, the requirement of subsection 4 of section 11. And then the next proposition which was laid down by this decision is that the principal commissioner of the competent authority, who is seized with the approval, now is competent to see not only your objects, to see not only your activities, but also to your profit positions, to see now whether the funds is to be invested in the prescribed modes of investment as prescribed under section 11 subsection 5, whether you are complying with the requirement of some other specific law which is essential for you to attain your objects. So competent authority at the time of even approval is competent to see all these things. Again, there is a major shift in the jurisprudence which was available in this regard, because earlier the jurisprudence was this, that at the stage of approval, the competent authority is competent to see only whether the objects are charitable or not, whether the activities are being carried out in accordance with the objects or not. But Supreme Court has expanded the scope of inquiry at the level of the competent authority in order to satisfy about all these facets also. So, but then this decision, though may not be applicable to those charitable trusts and institutions which are registered under section 12AA or 12AB, but then you never know, the mind of the court is influenced by this overriding decision and new noble, because the recently Hyderabad bench of the tribunal in Fernandez Hospital now has taken note of the new nobles and then has applied there, and with utmost respect I would say, I mean, it has led to the miscarriage of justice, because 1023C 6 language is very restrictive language. It cannot be mechanically imported to section 11 and 12A. But then unless that decision given by Honorable Hyderabad bench is set at naught or is modified, altered or varied by competent court, higher court, till then that is going to create a problem. So now it is 7:26. I would say Brajesh ji, I would say Mohan ji, now with respect to even appeals, there are several other facets which I also would have liked to amplify, clarify, deal and dwell, but then because of the paucity of time, it was not possible, but then we'll speak on some other time. I just wanted to skip, I just wanted to skip as what is the meaning of aggrieved SSC? What is the meaning of the eligible orders, I mean, which were appealable, because not all orders are appealable. Now, whether the stay of the demand could be moved before the CIT appeal, there is no explicit power under the Income Tax Act. Now, what is the scope of the enhancement for the CIT appeal? Atul Puriji asked one very good question. He always asks very good questions. Now, once you file appeal, now whether you can withdraw it. Yes, you can withdraw it, but only after the CIT appeal or appellate authority gives you the permission. Now, you cannot be heard saying that it is my right of appeal. Therefore, the moment I want to withdraw it, no, it's not. It's not.
Yes, sir. Somer has already discussed this.
Yes.
That once you have filed it, you cannot withdraw it on your own unless until there is approval by CIT itself.
Yes. Now there appears to be more question in question and answer. S.L. Gupta sir, in case there is genuine case of not depositing the PF on 15th, being PF portal was not working on 15th, PF deposited on 16th. Dekhi sir, so far as the statute is concerned, the statutory authorities would not be able to help you. In such a situation, only the constitutional authority can help you. And for that, you will have to knock at the door of the High Court. When some order is passed against you by any statutory authority, instead of you filing appeal, because even if you file appeal, you are not going to get any relief, because all statutory authorities are bound to follow the statute. Only the constitutional authorities can tinker the statute, of course, within the parameters of the constitution. So this situation can be tackled by the constitutional authority, that is the High Court. Is there any due date for payment of contributions of employees for NPS? NPS, what is means NPS? Pension scheme, some pension scheme.
National pension scheme, sir.
The contributions of employees for NPS, that I am not aware. I'll have to see, Nankumar sir. Should ESI PF appeals be filed in case of order under section 143(1) for assessment by states also, or there is no for 22-23? No, I would say for 143(1) there is a hope on several counts which I just mentioned. The month, how much is the delay, whether the delay is by the end of the next month, then that argument, the month has to be seen, which month has to be seen. And therefore, I mean, according to me, the litigations can be kept alive. That is what my humble advice. Yes. And then, okay, all questions are over.
Yes.
It is now 7:30 exact. Thank you, Brajesh ji. Thank you, Mohan sir.
So very much time bound. बहुत मतलब मेरे को तो बड़ा आश्चर्य हो रहा है, 7:30 बजे बोला और आपने बिल्कुल 7:30 बजे ही खत्म करा. And I definitely would like to extend my thanks to Somil that he has covered very nicely about the appeal, the facts, the grounds, additional ground, continuation of delay, additional evidence. सब चीजों को बहुत अच्छी तरह उन्होंने समझाया. और डेफिनेटली आप सुप्रीम कोर्ट के आपने 5 केसेस दिए हुए थे.
लेकिन it was not possible to discuss.
हाँ. लेकिन आपने चेकमेट, जस्टिस भटका, बिल्कुल आपने अच्छी तरह से सब समझाया. एसएम ओवरसीज, न्यू नोबल, आपने एटलीस्ट तीनों चीजों को बहुत अच्छी तरह से कवर किया. मैं चाहूंगा
आपने सवाल सिर्फ 5 ही नहीं लिए सर, आपने बहुत सारे सवालों के जवाब दिए हैं. आई थिंक सो क्वेश्चन आंसर्स में जितने क्वेश्चंस थे, देयर आर मोर देन 20-25 क्वेश्चंस वाज देयर व्हिच यू हैव रिप्लाइड बाय यू सर.
थैंक यू सर.
मैंने देखा है कि फिजिकल में प्रोग्राम करते हैं तो शायद 2 घंटे इतना कंसिस्टेंट प्रोग्राम नहीं हो पाता है, लेकिन आज इतना कंसिस्टेंट प्रोग्राम है, बहुत अच्छी तरह से डेलिब्रेट हुआ है. मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगा आज प्रोग्राम सुनकर. नॉर्मली दिसंबर में हमने बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम किए, लेकिन पूरे 2 घंटे मैंने कोई प्रोग्राम नहीं सुना, बट आज पूरे 2 घंटे में कंसिस्टेंटली इस प्रोग्राम को सुन रहा हूँ. मैंने अपना वो दोनों माइक और वीडियो दोनों बंद किए हुए थे, बट आई वाज लिसनिंग द होल प्रोग्राम वेरी नाइसली. बहुत अच्छा लगा सर सुन के.
और जैन साहब का सानिध्य मिला हमें, बताइएगा. आप तो बहुत दिनों में आज जैन साहब से मिले.
जैन साहब, वोट ऑफ थैंक्स दीजिए.
सर, I will entrust to Mohan ji, our founder member, say a word of thanks.
ठीक है मोहन.
नहीं जैन साहब, वोट ऑफ थैंक्स आपसे ज्यादा अच्छा लगेगा, बिकॉज यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ एनर्जी टू से अबाउट वोट ऑफ थैंक्स सर. कैरी ऑन.
I have nothing to add much, but the knowledge ocean which Dr. Rakesh ji have, I think it is a asset for our profession, and he always add values. And I listened to Somil ji and his deliberations. I think he is stepping in the shoes of our mentors, I will say. So definitely I would love to listen to his deliberations quite often on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We are honored, sir. We both are honored, sir. Thank you, Mohan sir. Thank you,
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
हमने जैन साहब, हमने प्रोग्राम किया है सेंट्रल दिल्ली स्टडी सर्कल की तरफ से. हर महीने 2 या 3 प्रोग्राम जरूर करेंगे. आप चिंता नहीं करो. स्वामी जी से हम रिक्वेस्ट फिर कर देंगे, बट प्रोग्राम हम ऑनलाइन ही करेंगे.
सर, ऑनलाइन करिए और क्वार्टरली एक फिजिकल करिए, कुछ बड़े स्केल पे.
हाँ, तो क्वार्टरली फिजिकल तो आप फेलोशिप पे ज्यादा फोकस करना चाह रहे हो ना, पढ़ाई पे नहीं. जो पढ़ाई का मजा इसके अंदर, ऑनलाइन में पढ़ाई में मजा है ना,
पढ़ाई के साथ बॉडी लैंग्वेज इंटरेक्शन इज इक्वली इम्पोर्टेंट.
वो भी करेंगे सर.
करेंगे सर, करेंगे.
थैंक यू वेरी मच सर. सो नाइस यू भाई साहब, एंड सो वेल फॉर स्पेयरिंग योर वैल्यूएबल टाइम सर. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. वेबिनार क्लोज कर सकते हैं। थैंक यू।
Thank you very much, sir.
थैंक यू।